and not get the money that was already set aside to make up for it. And the best part is, you don't need to pay anything up front. No out-of-pocket costs, no fighting, no court. You just answer 5 questions and get a free case review. Literally nothing to lose. Click the link below, answer the 5 questions, and in 30 seconds, you'll know if you're owed big money. But you have to know there is a time limit. In most cases, you only have about 12 months from the date of the accident to take action. After that, the door closes. The money is gone, and the insurance company keeps every penny. For most people, that's tens of thousands of dollars walking right out the door. So if your accident happened in the last year, do not wait. 30 seconds could change your entire financial situation. Click the link below right now. Answer 5 simple questions and see if there's a check waiting for you before it's too late.
The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. Law number 10. Infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. You can die from someone else's misery. Emotional states are as infectious as diseases. You may feel you're helping the drowning man, but you're only precipitating your own disaster. The unfortunate sometimes draw misfortune on themselves. They will also draw it on you. Associate with the happy and fortunate instead. The infector possesses an inward instability that radiates outward, drawing disaster to all that they touch. Mary Gilbert, aka Lola Montez of Ireland, was one such person. Lola found herself in the role of a courtesan, prostitute of the royal court. In today's society, Lola would be considered a gold digger. She only sought out men with high social standing in the community that she could use for her own gain. Once she would have her hooks in these men, their slow demise began. One of her victims was King Ludwig of Bavaria, who felt compelled to help Lola. Yet once he was warned of the dangers of his affair with her, he could not seem to resist Lola's aura and almost found his once peaceful country in a state of civil war. It was not until then that the king finally ordered Lola to leave, but a month after she left, King Ludwig was forced to relinquish his throne. There are many men who suffered because of their association with Lola Montez. King Ludwig said that he was bewitched by Lola. Lola was an unstable, incurable, and infectious character type. This is not to say that these characteristics are only restricted to women. This is to say that there are some people whose emotions are so powerful that they infect the very soul of the people that they touch. How to recognize an infector? They draw misfortune upon themselves. They have a turbulent past. They have a long line of broken relationships. They have an unstable career. They have a forceful character that sweeps you up and makes you lose reason. They have a desire to destroy and unsettle, and is chronically dissatisfied. They have great effect on the world around them. And what do you do when you meet one? Don't argue with them. This is part of how they trap you. Don't try to help them no matter what they say. Don't pass the person on to your friends or you will become enmeshed. Flee the infector's presence or suffer the consequences. Learn to fear the power of infection. The risk of associating with infectors is that you will waste valuable time and energy.
This cover 40, drive around Lompoc very recklessly. Their music is always blaring, usually smoking. I feel like I have seen man driving it, but usually it has a passenger. There are several people that drive around town and have their music so loud like that, and this is one of them. It is so disrespectful and unsafe. The bass often wakes me up at night, makes me so angry. Local PD does nothing.
Now I put down 5 ways to affect positive change through your associations. If you are miserly by nature, associate with the generous and they will infect you, opening up everything that is tight and restricted in you. Only generous souls attain greatness. If you are gloomy, gravitate to the cheerful. If you are prone to isolation, force yourself to befriend the gregarious. Never associate with those who share your defects. They will reinforce what holds you back. One simple example is the meth head who tries to break out of the cycle of drugs and still just hangs out with his other meth head friends. It's just a very difficult environment. And 5, only create associations with positive affinities. So to quote Balthasar Gracian once again, recognize the fortunate so that you may choose their company and the unfortunate so that you may avoid them. Misfortune is usually the crime of folly, and among those who suffer from it there is no malady more contagious. Never open your door to the least of misfortunes, for if you do, many others will follow in its train. Do not die of another's misery. That's it for this vlog. If you seek more soulful reviews, you might just want to subscribe. for watching.
Okay. I wasn't gonna post this, but like I literally can't stop thinking about it. If this helps even one person, it's worth it. So I'm not gonna say her name, but one of my friends, she got hit by a car 3 months ago. Not her fault, the other driver ran a red light. She's literally dealing with so much back pain, neck pain, can barely pick up her kids. Insurance calls her, and do you know what they offered her? $7,000 for a wreck that wasn't even her fault. For months of pain, for not even being able to work, not being able to hold her own children without crying.
Here's coverage. An over-the-counter benefit. A basic fitness membership. If you're turning 65, you may qualify for the Medicare initial enrollment period, which is the 3 months before, the month of, and the 3 months after the month of your 65th birthday. There are also special enrollment periods, including if you lose your group coverage, stop working, or move. Aetna offers Medicare Advantage plans starting at a $0 monthly plan premium. So call for your free Medicare coverage assessment today. Call 1-844-730-6899.
You starting to take out? Are you for it for certain? Certainty matters. So when you need the right high-quality promotional product, printed perfectly and guaranteed to arrive on time, that's the certainty of 4imprint. Wow your clients, nail your next event, or inspire your team by visiting 4imprint.com. 4imprint, for certain.
Most men over 40 feel like this. Come on, when they could be feeling like this. Yeah. Most men over 40 feel like this. When they could be feeling like this. Yeah. Most men over 40 feel like this. When they could be feeling like this. The difference is this.
For the #1 selling testosterone brand in GNC and Walmart comes the Genix Total T2, combining a drug-free next-gen T booster with a powerful nitric oxide booster that sends blood and oxygen to muscles in just 3 hours. Feel like a new man, leaner, stronger, with more energy and drive. Get your complimentary bottle by texting BAT to 321-321.
And she'll like it too.
Get your complimentary bottle now. Text BAT to 321-321. Do it now, and we'll include a bottle of Nugenix Neurozone Brain Supplement absolutely free.
Magic artifacts. What is happening?
What's wrong there? Oh, it's a win.
The Librarians. All Sundays and Mondays at 9 on TNT. July 2008, Houston, Texas. Escaped murder suspect Daryl Norris decides to check into a cheap motel and find out.
You look so familiar. I swear I've seen your face or something.
No, I'm just getting my own business right now.
But the fugitive panics when he sees his face splashed across the motel lobby's TV.
You're from Buckwood?
Yeah!
I'm from Buckwood.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. I had put down some bogus city, right, just one off the top of my head. It turned out to be one that she lived at when she was a little girl growing up.
You know Buckwood High?
That must be where I know your face from. Yeah. I was like, well, maybe that's where we crossed paths or something, I don't know.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. Here, here's your key.
After an agonizing couple of minutes,
Okay, great.
the clerk hands Norris's room key. Being on the run is beginning to take a serious toll.
It was all troubling all the way through. There was no relief, really.
Safely in his room, Norris begins working the phone. Finally, he gets a hold of Jamal
Jamal! Yeah! Oh, it's so good to hear your voice.
and asks for a ride to the Mexican border.
And him and I were pretty tight. So he says, man, I've been watching you on the news. Yeah. I go, look, I just need a ride. He said, yeah, man, I'll help you out. All right. See you soon.
Jamal agrees to pick him up in a few hours. But that afternoon, the meeting time comes and goes. Nora starts to get nervous.
I called him again. He had forgotten about his sister's birthday party. What? And he wanted to go there for about an hour or two. Alright. And then he picked me up.
Norris is growing suspicious of Jamal. But he decides to roll the dice and stay put.
He was pretty much my last option. Sheriff's Department.
Meanwhile, Waller County officers get an anonymous tip.
Hotel on 7th Lake. Okay. We received a call from our dispatchers who said there is a person calling in saying that Norris was at a hotel in Houston. Thank you.
Chief Deputy Cantrell immediately notifies the Houston Police Department.
That was very exciting, and that resulted in a massive number of law enforcement agents converging on that hotel in Houston.
Back in the motel, Jamal still hasn't shown up. Norris decides he's got to keep moving. He wonders if Jamal turned him in.
I realized he was stalling. I realized that I shouldn't even be dealing with him at all.
But it's too late. Officers from the Houston PD have arrived and are surrounding the motel.
I keep peeking out the window, and at one point I see the shadows out in the parking lot. Thinking, damn, hope that's not police. I'm decided, man, I don't want to get stuck in this room. There's nothing I can do. Doing a standoff with it.
The fugitive casually walks to the pool, hoping to hide in plain sight until he has a chance to slip away.
Stop right there. Don't move. Don't move. I know I'm busted. I'm just sliding the pool. I mean, why not, right? Get out of the pool, Norris! They had their guns drawn. Told me to put my hands up and get out. Come on. Get out. Get out. Get over here. I was upset that my plan had fell through. Norris, get out of the pool. Get out there. I can take you again. I got caught. That was it. There's nothing you can do.
Robert, when I got that call that he was in custody, I was ecstatic. And it was very important to me that we make sure that we keep our hands on him this time so that he can be brought to justice.
Norris and his accomplice stand trial for murder. Norris receives 45 years. His partner Robert gets a 75-year sentence. Norris will be eligible for parole in 2030.
I'm sorry he lost his life. I wish it had never happened, but if I brood over it throughout my time, it's gonna probably destroy me.
What I would say to my brother is he has family that love him and will always support him.
I would just tell my sister I wish we could start over, just go back to the beginning. It'd all be different.
When tragedy derails a young man's life, he spins out of control.
So join up all A's, put them into our mix. You'll try and hurt somebody, you just don't care.
In prison, he joins forces with other inmates
Let's get out of here.
and carries out one of the most daring escapes in history.
What made it spectacular was the number of inmates. It strikes fear.
But the temptations on the outside are too great and could cost them their freedom. No criminal wants to go to prison, so some go on the run. This is the story of how one man almost got away with it. Summer 1986, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
All right, bro, listen very carefully.
Andrew Heim is a shy and insecure 16-year-old who often feels like an outcast.
for the better part of the grease.
He's always looked up to his more confident and outgoing brother Dave.
Alright, there you go.
And he was probably a bad influence, I guess. Yeah, well, he was about a year and a half older than me, so obviously he started, going astray before I did.
He was very close to his brother. He followed him everywhere. He wanted to be just like him.
But it basically means the officer has some specific reason to believe that you're up to something. For example, police can legally stop someone who matches the description of a criminal suspect. A suspect who drops a suspicious object after seeing the police. Or someone who runs away after seeing the police. Don't ever run from the police. That's part of what the officers can use to find the car. And they'll run you down and make you regret it. But if you see police approaching, be calm and assert your rights if need be. But don't...
7 to 1.
See, this is how they get you. Police come knocking at your door saying, hey there, we've got a new safety program. Can we search your home? Hell no. You don't have
What time are you gonna have to let them in?
Even if the police have probable cause, the Fourth Amendment requires them to get a signed search warrant from a judge to enter and search your home. Unless there's a serious emergency, they can't come in without a search warrant. But they don't need a warrant if you invite them in. When the officers came knocking, Karen could have...
It only takes a second to schedule your free second opinion. So what's there to lose? Speak to Daniel Walsh.
Good afternoon, officers. How can I help you?
The chain lock works fine too.
Who is it?
Police department.
Good afternoon, officers. How can I help you?
Hi, ma'am. Do you mind if we come in for a moment?
Do you have a warrant? What's this about?
No, my name is Officer Smith.
Visuals, great coverage. My joint stuff.
We come in.
I can't let you in without a warrant. I can't let you in without a warrant.
Anita reminded you was that Americans were preparing for a repeat of the 1953 coup.
For many in Tehran, this was proof the US still supports the regime that had been toppled. Suspicion turns to anger, and the events that follow capture the world's attention. On the 4th of November 1979, Iranian students seized the US Embassy in Tehran, taking diplomats and embassy staff hostage as the world watches on.
Now, you may not agree, as many do not, with the taking over of the American embassy. But the fact of the matter is, the background of the 1953 coup was very much alive in the minds of many Iranians. And unfortunately, the way the United States has behaved since then has vindicated the assumption that the United States never wanted to recognize the will of the Iranian people. Always wanted to replace this government with somebody subservient to the interest of the United States.
Publicly, Khomeini gives his blessing to the embassy attack, a decision that provokes uproar in his own government. In protest, just 2 days after the takeover, Iran's Prime Minister, Mehdi Barzani, and his entire cabinet resigned. In all this noise,
Where do you stand?
here, your trading finds peace. DEPA, with over 4.5 million traders worldwide who trust FTMO. Backed by more than 45,000 verified reviews. Trusted by traders, proven by results. FTMO, learn more. Cantonal Plus, it's the joint mobility support supplement I recommend.
I've been giving Antanol Plus to Lucy for 2 years. I want to protect Lucy with a pure, sustainable product that will keep her joints limber.
Antanol Plus is clinically proven to improve mobility in as little as 30 days.
I really want to thank Antanol Plus. She doesn't get tired. She can run all day.
Real joint relief in as little as 30 days. Visit AntanolPlus.com and get 50% off your first order.
The United States attempts to rescue the hostages in Operation Eagle Claw in April 1980. The mission ends in disaster, and the humiliation of the failure leaves Washington desperate to find an end to the crisis.
The responsibility is fully my own. In the aftermath of the attempt, we continue to hold the government of Iran responsible for the safety and for the early release of the American hostages who have been held so long.
The hostage crisis goes on for 444 days. Their release is ultimately secured through diplomacy rather than military action.
Khomeini reacted to the reality that he was facing, which is how big it became internationally, and showing that America was now unable to do anything about such an act that Iran had carried out, and also using the diversion of the hostage crisis to basically purge the secular leftist element of the revolution altogether.
One by one, opposition voices are silenced. Internationally, Khomeini is vilified by most governments for his defense of the hostage takers. His image in the West, now of a hard-line, hostile leader, to be feared.
A military stalemate.
Across the border, America's then ally Iraq is watching, fearful. Their concern, the revolution will reach them and spark an uprising among the substantial Shia population, a fear the US reinforces. In September 1980, encouraged by US military and financial support, Saddam Hussein invades Iran. The 8-year Iran-Iraq war begins.
The Islamic Republic was firmly of the belief that America was behind that war, that America encouraged Saddam and then later on encouraged other Arab countries to support Saddam with intelligence, with money, and that the 8-year war was also really an American war against the revolution.
The US and Iran are now implacable enemies. Khomeini casts the war with Iraq as a divine struggle, dismissing multiple ceasefire requests from Baghdad. Iraq's actions during the war cross serious legal and moral boundaries. Despite this, the United States continues to throw its support behind them.
Saddam Hussein used sarin nerve gas against the Iranian fighters. In the Iran-Iraq war, many thousands were killed by sarin nerve gas. This was all, many journalists documented this in detail. And the American government, this would be the Reagan administration at this point, you can find the fingerprints of, it's called the receipts, the precursor chemicals to the sarin nerve gas being traced back to American companies. So at the time, America did not complain about Saddam Hussein's use of sarin nerve gas on the battlefield. And this was one of the big issues that Iran certainly noticed.
The cost of the war is devastating. $600 billion of damage to Iranian infrastructure. More than 1 million lives lost. In the end, there is no victory, but a survival that serves only to embolden Iran further.
Given how calamitous that war was in terms of damage to Iran's economy, the number of Iranians that were killed, the sacrifices that the war took, it basically shaped the Islamic Republic and the Iranian society for a whole generation to come. For instance, Iran's Revolutionary Guard was born out of the Iran-Iraq war. Most of its commanders, until very recently, were the veterans of that war. The lessons they learned about America, about politics, about war making, about national security, were all born out of that war.
Shortly after the end of the war, in June 1989, following months of ill health, Khomeini dies. His replacement is Ali Khamenei. Though never the most senior cleric, he was a loyal disciple of his predecessor, and his revolutionary and political credentials see him appointed to the highest office in Iran. He would go on to be Iran's supreme leader for 36 years. But Washington continues to see Tehran as a threat to American interests, despite the new leadership. And Israel, a longtime ally of the US, stresses that Iran is an ever-growing threat and a dangerous influence across the region. This ushers in a new era of proxy wars, harsher sanctions, and covert operations. The most powerful of these proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Israel began to become more worried about an Iranian juggernaut emerging out of the Iran-Iraq war rather than an Iraqi juggernaut emerging. And then also in 1982, Israel invaded Lebanon, which then Iran viewed essentially as Israel positioning itself to become a much bigger force in the Middle East, and that and to basically position itself to take Iran on as well. And that's the beginning of Iran's much more direct involvement in Lebanon, creation of Hezbollah, etc. And from this point onwards, Iran and Israel view one another antagonistically.
What Tehran sees as deterrence, Israel views as an existential threat on its doorstep.
The Israelis, after first having tried to be Iran's ally, even throughout the 1980s, completely shift in the early 1990s, and now become the foremost power, pushing the United States to contain Iran, sanction Iran, and eventually go to war with Iran, because now they view Iran as a regional rival rather than a potential regional partner.
Washington echoes these fears, but military intervention still remains off the table. Instead, they respond with more crippling sanctions. The US and its Western allies cut Iran off from the global economy, targeting everything from its banks and oil exports to international trade. The goal is clear: isolate Iran economically and curb its ability to project power beyond its borders. Iran has no choice but self-sufficiency.
Iran has applied the same lessons it learned from the Iran-Iraq war to surviving economic isolation. In other words, they have to do it themselves. They have to produce their own things. They have to figure ways to go around sanctions. They have to sustain their economy, even though it gets poorer. They have to do it on their own.
But self-sufficiency has its limits for a country now isolated from global markets. So Iran invests in its nuclear program, a program they say is for domestic and peaceful use. But what is acceptable in the hands of a Western-backed monarch is far less acceptable in the hands of a revolutionary government opposed to the US.
Well, what happened in 1979 was the American government just did a 180 and completely reversed gears on supporting the development of nuclear power plants in Iran for electric power purposes. But the Iranian government didn't see why it should stop.
What follows is a new phase in US-Iran relations, one where the nuclear question dominates diplomacy, confrontation, and global attention. For more than 4 decades, the United States and its allies tried to curb Iran's influence through sanctions, international pressure, and isolation. But the Islamic Republic refuses to abandon what it views as essential for its survival, and further develops its nuclear program. At the turn of the millennium, a hidden nuclear site is discovered in Iran.
Is when the world discovers that Iran is building a centrifuge facility at Natanz. The Iranian government admitted to it. The American government at the time, this was with the second George Bush administration in 2002, claimed that it was a violation of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. But from that point on, things went on a different track. It became not just a political antagonism between the United States and Iran, it became a military antagonism.
Since then, Washington's stance has been consistent.
Just make it abundantly clear to the Iranian regime that they must not have the capability of developing a nuclear weapon.
The United States will do everything in our power to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon.
Iran will never get a nuclear weapon on my watch.
Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon.
For Iran's critics, the concerns are obvious.
I think everybody understands that nuclear proliferation is a threat to not simply the nearby countries, but regions, in fact, the entire world. Because it is certainly the case that if there are regimes or governments overturned, those nuclear materials, those nuclear weapons could fall into the wrong hands.
Any efforts at diplomacy falter and sanctions tighten. Iran presses ahead with its nuclear program, insisting it's peaceful. Israel pressures the US to adopt a harder line, insisting they're vulnerable to Iranian aggression. But for Washington, military action remains off the table.
The Israelis now want to make sure that Iran and no other country in the region can challenge Israel's dominance and position in the region. The nuclear program has been the most effective pretext for that. That's not to say that the nuclear program is not a challenge from the Israeli standpoint, but it's not a challenge that necessitates war.
Unable to convince the US into military action, Israel pursues its own covert war in Iran. In 2010, the suspected Israeli cyber attack, Stuxnet, strikes the Natanz nuclear facility, sabotaging centrifuges. The damage is significant, but not beyond recovery. Tel Aviv continues its campaign against Iran. Israel's intelligence agency Mossad assassinated Iranian nuclear scientists, the most prominent, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. Still undeterred, Iran keeps developing its nuclear objectives, and Israel continues to sound the alarm. No one more aggressively than Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Where should a red line be drawn? A red line should be drawn right here. Before Iran completes the second stage of nuclear enrichment, necessary to make a bomb.
Netanyahu has been pursuing the same policy for the past 34 years. The first time that Netanyahu said Iran was month or a couple of years away from a nuclear weapon was in 1992, when he was only a member of Knesset. And he's been repeating that ever since.
With Turo, cars are wherever you want to pick them up. Rental cars are at Section H, Space 45. We just action pack that way. Right car, right where you need it. Turo, rent a car, not a rental car. Down it goes! It's their weapon, Yama! It's a game winner! And Victor Wesley Yama is the hero!
Despite Israeli pressure, Washington is determined to avoid military action and instead choose mediation. In 2015, US President Barack Obama achieves through diplomacy what years of sanctions could not. After nearly 2 years of highly sensitive, secret negotiations, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA, is reached and signed by a group of world leaders.
JCPOA started from two opposing objectives. Iran was saying that we have a right to peaceful nuclear technology, including enrichment, and the United States was saying that Iran cannot have enrichment. So these two objectives were irreconcilable. The minute, and that was the most difficult part, the minute that we could
come to the same objective, and that was Iran has a right to nuclear power, to nuclear energy and technology, but Iran should not develop nuclear weapons. This common objective enabled us to reach something.
Critics of the agreement believe the United States has made a dangerous compromise.
There was sand under the foundation of the JCPOA because of the notification responsibilities for the inspectors and the limitations on the inspectors. That's just a matter of fact. They couldn't inspect military facilities, as I understand it, had to give a month's notice. Any agreement to be solid has got to be subject to intrusive verification. And the JCPOA, which was not a treaty, not a agreement, but a joint plan of action, didn't have that.
The loudest of critics, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But years of frustration with previous administrations gave way to a new opportunity in 2017, when he finds a more willing ally in the White House.
Netanyahu was trying to persuade Trump during the first Trump administration to bomb Iran. What happened? They do regime change in Iran. And what happened is Trump didn't do it.
But what follows is no less consequential. From the Oval Office, a series of decisions would push Washington and Tehran closer to the brink of direct conflict than at any time in decades.
I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal.
2 years later, with little left to restrain them, the US assassinated the commander of Iran's elite Quds force, Qasem Soleimani, in Iraq.
We took action last night to stop a war. Soleimani has been perpetrating acts of terror to destabilize the Middle East for the last 20 years. What the United States did yesterday should have been done long ago.
The US insists Soleimani was developing plans to attack US diplomats and service members in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. But to many in Iran, Soleimani was a war hero. Iran's supreme leader warns of severe revenge, but ultimately exercises restraint.
When President Trump assassinated Soleimani in January 2020, which he did with airstrikes, air power, what Iran did was not do a tit for tat. It did not launch retaliation back. It did not escalate with retaliation. It did essentially a half tit for a tat. It under-responded.
Despite this restraint, tensions escalate, but somehow the fragile status quo between the United States and Iran endures. Israel, however, intensifies its covert campaigns, while Iran continues to fund and arm its proxies in the region. But the defining moment is still to come, one that ignites the entire region.
October 7th changed Israel fundamentally. The ferocity and scale of Hamas's attack, the way in which the Israeli public was both shocked and angered and horrified by what happened, changed the psychology of Israel in terms of how far it would go, at what cost, to eliminate all threats that it saw around it.
Israel's response in Gaza, brutal and relentless. The official death toll, over 70,000. Hundreds of thousands more displaced. Entire areas destroyed. A year into that genocide, in 2024, Israel bombs Iran's diplomatic compound in Syria, killing senior Iranian commanders. Iran retaliates, launching its first ever direct military strike on Israel. Israel also expands its long-standing military incursions into southern Lebanon, and in September 2024, they assassinate Hassan Nasrallah, the longtime leader of Iranian-backed Hezbollah. They go on to take military control of parts of the south. Iran's proxies across the region also become more active, particularly the Houthis in Yemen.
Netanyahu believes that in order for Israel to be secure, Israel has to destroy all the states that are that have the power that over time could damage Israel in the future.
Fragile governments in the region are made even more vulnerable. After decades of mounting pressure, on December 8, 2024, Bashar al-Assad's government in Syria collapses, ending 54 years of the Assad family rule, weakening an important regional ally for Iran.
The Israel that came out of the October 7th attack was determined to destroy Hamas, end the Palestinian issue by displacing Palestinians out of Gaza and potentially the West Bank. Once and for all, finish the Palestinian issue. Finish Hezbollah, take over.
The efforts continue between the United States and Iran. In Oman, indirect negotiations regarding Iran's nuclear program begin. Amid these talks, in June 2025, Netanyahu opts for military action. He justifies the attacks as necessary for Israel's very existence.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat.
Iran responds within hours and waves of missiles target Israel. This sees the start of a fierce exchange of direct attacks that will go on for 12 days. All negotiations between the United States and Iran come to an end.
The way the 12-day war started last June was, we need to remember, the United States was negotiating directly with Iran, and they were talking about the beginnings of an actual deal. And what started the 12-day war was when Israel, again, on its own, went and bombed the negotiators. So they literally knew the time and place of the negotiators of Iran, and the 12-day war started by Israel using that targeting information, which was based on going to the negotiations, to kill the negotiators.
Nonetheless, the United States backs its ally Israel and enters the conflict. In June 2025, they launch Operation Midnight Hammer, bombing 3 major Iranian nuclear sites.
The U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
Despite the attack, Iran signals a willingness to pursue diplomacy rather than escalate further.
Iran will continue exercising its legitimate right of self-defense. Iran is ready to consider diplomacy once again.
But with diplomacy failing, Iran responds, not with another warning, but with missiles towards El Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest US military hub in the Middle East. Despite the attack, a deal brokered by Doha and Washington brings an end to the 12-day war. In January 2026, growing unrest inside Iran leads to anti-government protests. These are framed by some as coordinated by external forces, and by others as spontaneous uprisings in response to poor economic conditions. Seeing a possible opportunity for regime change, Trump encourages Iranians who oppose the government to continue their uprising.
To all Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions if possible, help is on its way.
But that help never arrives. Instead, the US begin moving military assets throughout the region. Israel, though not at the table, is also talking to the United States.
The narrative has been pushed by the Israelis that depicted Iran as so weak that just a small push would cause the government there to either collapse and implode or lead to their capitulation. They're already so weak. Look at all of the protests inside the country. They're about to fall. Why don't you just do a little bit and then you can take credit for the entire
chief mediator, Bedr al-Husseini, is optimistic a deal is within reach. But on February 28, 2026, on the eve of the agreement being signed, Israel and the United States launch a full-scale attack on Iran. Diplomacy is over, and Washington has a stark warning for Tehran.
Lay down your arms. You will be treated fairly with total immunity, or you will face certain death.
I think President Trump made a good effort to try to start a new set of negotiations and didn't work. So I think he took the negotiations to the next level or to a different dimension and used military force as a matter of trying to compel the Iranians to a better solution.
But for many in Iran, they believe Israel finally convinces Washington to do what it couldn't do alone.
So it is now apparent that the United States had intentions or was persuaded by the Israelis to go into policies that from any analytical perspective does not even serve the interests of the United States. At the end of the day, the current war serves only the interests of Netanyahu, not the American people, not the United States government, and certainly not the people of our region.
I just the budgeting out for phase 44. You just built an app.
So we can all build ourselves. I'm not sure.
Just built an inventory tracker.
Protein calculator.
Profesor de español.
Constitutionally and religiously the top of the system. But the Islamic Republic was built for resilience and survival exactly because it has been isolated and at war with the world's premier superpower for 4 decades. It is being built in a way that it can survive the killing of a leader or the decapitation of a leader.
Khamenei's son, Mujtaba, is appointed as his successor. Under his new leadership, Iran's response is swift, and to many, surprising. Israel's own vulnerabilities are exposed as some Iranian drones and missiles break through its much-vaunted Iron Dome. And across the Gulf, long-standing assumptions about U.S. protection are being questioned as Iran repeatedly attacks America's regional allies.
The idea that the United States can and will protect the Arab countries of the Persian Gulf is gone. They could be furious with Iran, and very justifiably so, for attacking them. But the fact remains that the GCC as an idea, and the American bases, and the close security partnership with the United States was built to protect the Persian Gulf Emirates against an aggressive Iran. And in that, the United States has failed.
Though militarily outmatched by the United States and Israel, both seem unprepared by the ferocity of Iran's response. Iran also holds a powerful bargaining chip, one of the world's most important waterways through which millions of barrels of oil and liquefied gas are transported, the Strait of Hormuz. They control it, close it, and prevent any ship from passing through.
From now on, all navigating through the Strait of Hormuz is forbidden.
They were in a much better position. The Iranians were much stronger than the image that had been cultivated about them.
The war rages on for over 3 months. As peace negotiations repeatedly fail, Donald Trump insists a deal is imminent, multiple times.
We've had very big discussions with Iran. They want to make a deal. We thought pretty much getting close to making a deal. So they want to make a deal. They want to negotiate.
Tehran and Washington sent top representatives to Pakistan to come up with a roadmap for peace. While there are still no Israelis officially present at the talks, one key point for Iran was Israel's complete withdrawal from Lebanon. Then once again, on the eve of a deal being signed, in April 2026, Israel attacks Beirut, carrying out 100 strikes in 10 minutes, causing devastating damage. Yet despite these attacks, on the 17th of June 2026, the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding is signed by Iran and the US. For a brief moment, diplomacy appears to prevail as an uneasy ceasefire is reached. For Israel, the possible implications of this peace are deeply concerning.
Now Israel has to probably contemplate that it has to live in the Middle East, in which Iran will be likely a larger force than it was on February of 2026. It is a failure. And then they have to calibrate how they coexist with it. I don't think they will desist from trying to take Iran down. But the fact of it is that this particular chapter, they have come short.
As the Memorandum of Understanding comes into effect, the Strait of Hormuz, now a focal point of this war, reopens briefly. But it's a brittle peace, collapsing after just 19 days. Escalating disputes over the waterway, along with Israel's continued attacks across the region, throw the two sides further apart. And in July 2026, in response to Iranian attacks on tankers, the US once again bomb Iran. Iran immediately closes the collapses. As the ceasefire shatters, Donald Trump makes his feelings clear.
To me, I think it's over. I don't want to deal with them with this scum. You know what scum is? They're scum. They're sick people. They're led by sick people. And they're vicious, violent people.
Tehran delivers its own warning. Any attempt to capture Iranian territory will force a change in their strategy.
من اعلام میکنم تمام شد. هم مذاکره کرد تمام شد. در مورد که بخوان نقطه‌ای از سرزمین ما رو بگیرن، ما ممکن وارد همون مرحله تهاجمی بشیم، از حالت تدافعی خارج بشیم، از حالت بازدارندگی و مقابله با دست خارج بشیم.
As violence reignites across the Middle East, all sides launch missiles and drones. Air defense systems fire back as explosions ripple across the region. Meanwhile, Israel's military remains active on 3 fronts: the occupied West Bank, Gaza, and Lebanon. Confrontations, decades in the making. A country reshaped by a coup that overthrew a leader. A revolution that transformed a region. Now, a cycle of strikes, retaliation, and escalation. And the Middle East, once again, in the grips of conflict and deadly violence.
Sometimes it just gets quoted and built. No one
one took the time to review the application. We've seen how this ends.
So we start with the application.
We look at how it's used, what it's carrying, where it lives. Then we decide the right way to build it.
Additive, traditional, hybrid.
Whatever actually makes sense.
So it works. Till first time.
That's how we build. Build different.
Built with A3D.
Flattened Gaza entirely.
28th of February 2026. A girls' elementary school in Minam, in South Iran, hit by a US missile strike. Killed, most of them children. After decades of threats, proxy wars, and brinkmanship, the United States launches direct military strikes on Iran.
The Department of War launched Operation Epic Fury, the most lethal, most complex, and most precise aerial operation in history.
The US's war with Iran is underway. In conjunction with their ally Israel, who claim Iran is the greatest threat to their country and to the entire Middle East. Iran vows to retaliate. Iranian missiles and drones slam into Israeli cities and military sites. US targets across the Gulf come under attack as Iran retaliates against America's regional allies. As violence escalates and new fear emerges, control of the Strait of Hormuz, the artery through which much of the world's oil flows, shut by Iran. Oil prices soar, global economies shrink. But this is a conflict fought in the shadows for nearly half a century. One transforming the Middle East and beyond, long before the first missile is ever fired. In 1951, a nationalist leader rises to power in Iran. Mohammad Mossadegh. Democratically elected, his campaign pledges to take back control of Iran's oil. A promise immensely popular amongst Iranians, following years of social inequality and foreign domination. Once in power, he nationalizes the oil industry, stripping the British-owned Anglo-Iranian Oil Company of complete control over Iran's most valuable natural resource. Britain's reliance on this oil prompts them to ask the US for help to overthrow Mossadegh.
The Brits had tried to convince the United States to get rid of Mossadegh early on because of the sin he had committed, which was that he wanted Iran to keep 50% of its own oil revenue and income instead of shipping all of it out to the Brits. And the United States were not sympathetic to the British position.
The Brits find another way of convincing the US join their efforts to oust Mossadegh.
Once Mossadegh was cast not as a nationalist that was challenging British control over Iranian resources, but as a potential communist that would turn Iran in the direction of the Soviet Union. This was the argument that ultimately worked with the American side at the time, because everything was seen from the lens of the Cold War.
What follows becomes one of the most consequential covert operations in modern Middle Eastern history. In August 1953, a CIA and MI6-led coup unfolds in the streets of Tehran. After just 2 years as Iran's leader, Mohammad Mossadegh is overthrown.
They got rid of him, got rid of the entire prime minister position, essentially, or at least one in which there was an independent parliament that could elect him.
In his place, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the Shah of Iran. On the 22nd of August 1953, he returns to Tehran after his family's exile during World War II. He was the son of Iran's former king, Reza Shah, who abdicated in 1941, handing over power to his son. The US and Britain believed the new Shah is a person they can control, and that his royal lineage will make him an acceptable choice for Iranians.
The Shah of Iran was a military officer, a very important military officer, and he became the leader of the coup. And the Shah of Iran becomes essentially an American puppet, guaranteeing access to for Western companies to Iran's oil.
For many Iranians, this is more than a coup. It's a moment when foreign intervention once again reshapes the country's political trajectory. And with that, instead of getting stronger, Iran's relationship with the United States begins to unravel.
The Iranian people came to see the fall of Mossadegh as the doing of the United States and Britain, and the Shah's government from 1953 to 1979 was not an independent government. It was an American-imposed government and was controlled by the United States.
The Shah consolidates his power and for 2 decades tightly controls